Thank you so much. Wow. Wow, thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Josh Rawich, and I have the honor of serving as the president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. We are so happy to have all of you here with us here today at the internationally renowned Glimmerglass Opera Theater in Cooperstown to celebrate our 2025 award winners. Joining me on stage, we have the 10th Commissioner of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred, Tom Hamilton, the radio voice of the Guardians, I guess you know who he is, okay? 36 seasons, calling 3 World Series, countless memorable moments for Cleveland baseball fans, and earning him the 2025 Ford C. Frick Award. And we have with us Thomas Boswell, who spent more than 50 years as a tremendous reporter and columnist at one of the nation's preeminent newspapers, the Washington Post, earning him the 2025 BBWAA Career Excellence Award. And joining him is the president of the Baseball Writers Association of America, Bob Nightingale, who serves as a national baseball writer for USA Today. And I would now like to introduce the chairman of the board of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, Jane Forbes Clark.
Thank you, Josh. Good afternoon and welcome to the annual Hall of Fame Awards ceremony in this beautiful theater, home of the Glimmerglass Opera Festival. And we are so grateful to the team here for working so very hard to help us create this wonderful venue. We are going to begin today's program with the Ford C. Frick Award, which has been presented annually since 1978 to a broadcaster for major contributions to baseball. The award is named after a man who was a broadcaster, president of the National League, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, and a Hall of Famer class of 1970. Ford C. Frick was also instrumental in fostering the relationship between radio and the game of baseball. He was also the driving force, the inspiration behind my grandfather starting the National Baseball Hall of Fame. So I would now like to call your attention to our video monitor for a presentation about the 2025 Ford C. Frick Award winner, Tom Hamilton.
Tom Hamilton has been the soundtrack of summer for 35 years in Cleveland.
And we're underway at the corner of Carnegie and Ontario.
His energy and passion have inspired a generation of baseball fans. Hamilton got his start in radio in his native Wisconsin and spent 3 years toiling in the minors in Columbus, calling games for the then Yankee Farm Club. But then he got, as he put it, the call of a lifetime, landing a play-by-play opportunity in Cleveland. He debuted in the booth in 1990 alongside legendary pitcher-turned-broadcaster Herb Score. The club lost 190 games over his first 2 seasons, while playing their home games in cavernous and mostly deserted Municipal Stadium. But after the team moved into then Jacobs Field in 1994, a roster full of future All-Stars and Hall of Famers reinvigorated the downtrodden fan base who flocked to the new ballpark. Cleveland's pennant run in 1995 kicked off one of the greatest stretches in club history, featuring 3 pennants and 14 playoff appearances, with Hamilton at the mic for every big moment.
And yes, Cleveland, for the 14th time since 1995, you will have an October to remember.
Hamilton might be best known for his iconic home run calls.
To deep right, away back, off the pole, he's done it again!
On most game days in Cleveland, fans sport T-shirts with his iconic phrase plastered across them. And it's fitting that since the park, now known as Progressive Field, opened back in 1994, no team has more walk-off homers than Hamilton's.
Swung on, hit high, hit deep to left. There she goes. How about that?
This is October baseball. Agony and ecstasy can come at you in a hurry.
Agony and ecstasy sums up the Cleveland fans' postseason experience. Now 30 years on since the club's 1995 pennant following a 41-year-old drought. But Hamilton has been there for every moment of elation and every heartbreak. For many Northeastern Ohioans, he represents their connection to the club more than any player ever could. He is to Cleveland fans what Marty Brennaman is to Reds fans, what Hawk Harrelson is to White Sox fans, what Joe Castiglione is to Red Sox fans. And now he fittingly joins those greats in Cooperstown.
For nearly 4 decades, baseball fans in Cleveland have grown up listening to the voice of Tom Hamilton. He first fell in love with baseball as a youngster on a farm in Wisconsin before setting his sights on a broadcasting career in the 1970s and 80s. In 1990, Cleveland came calling and paired him with the team legend Herb Score. He earned listeners' trust with his objective accounts of the action and became the voice of a generation in Cleveland that enjoyed the most sustained success in franchise history. He is the only play-by-play voice in team history to work 3 World Series, calling moments in Cleveland that forever resonate for one of the game's most engaged fan bases. Greeting the fans with his welcome from the corner of Carnegie and Ontario at every home game, he has never failed to convey his genuine excitement for our national pastime. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our 2025 Ford C. Frick Award winner, Tom Hamilton.
Thank you so much. We have been overwhelmed, humbled, honored, and grateful. It is really hard for us to properly express how we have felt this entire week, this weekend, and really since the phone call we got on December 11th. And before we go any further, our eternal gratitude to James Forbes Clark, who is the chairman of the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, and whose grandfather, Stephen Carlton Clark, founded this incredible place in 1936. Jane, we cannot thank you enough for all you do for our game and for this incredible week. Thank you so much. Also, a special thanks to the President of the Hall of Fame, Josh Rawitsch, as well as Vice Presidents John Shostakovsky and Ken Meifert, who called us on December 11th with this incredible and stunning news, and to Whitney Horn and Rachel Kingham, and all of their help this weekend, and really since December. You have been so amazing. And to our own Francine Summers and Curtis Danberg of the Guardians, you folks have been incredible and have again made this so easy for all of us. And a special thanks to a gentleman you just heard, Joe Castiglione and his wife Jan. Joe, of course, went in last year as the Ford Frick recipient, and we have bothered them with countless phone calls. Jan, I promise Joe can now enjoy retirement. We won't bother you anymore. But your help has been beyond what you could have ever known, so thank you. You know, it's 912 miles from Waterloo, Wisconsin to Cooperstown, New York. And how this journey connected these two small towns is still very humbling, still very surreal. For me, as you heard Jane mention, the dream started as a little guy on our porch on our dairy farm outside of Waterloo, listening to the late, great Earl Gillespie call those Milwaukee Braves games. It seemed like such an enchanted life. Of course, like every little guy, I wanted to be Hank Aaron, or I wanted to be Eddie Matthews, or be Joe Torre. But reality hit. And when I got to high school, the coaches were like, "Dang, son, you do have a backup plan, don't you?" Somehow, that backup plan has brought us all together for this weekend in Cooperstown. I want to thank the Hall of Fame and the Ford Frick Award Voting Committee for this incredible honor, and congratulations to fellow 2025 classmates, Thomas Boswell, the incredible writer for so many years for the Washington Post, and of course, the players that make this the greatest game ever, and their day will be tomorrow for enshrinement: CC Sabathia, Ichiro Suzuki, Billy Wagner, the late Dick Allen, and the late Dave Parker. And a special thanks when we were coming over here on the bus ride to come into a bus with Hall of Famers like Alan Trammell and Ted Simmons and Robin Yount and other Hall of Famers that are here taking this in today. Guys, you have no idea how humbling that is, and we are so grateful that you're taking the time to be with us today. You know, since that phone call on December 11th, I've taken some time to reflect and wonder, how in the world did this happen? First Major League Baseball, and now Cooperstown. Totally unthinkable when I look back at one of my first play-by-play jobs in Watertown, Wisconsin. Now, I get called into the boss's office. He is so excited because he's got this great opportunity for me. And I'm thinking, yes, finally. Friday night football. I'm going to finally graduate to the big time, get to do the Watertown Goslings. Friday night football. We know how big Friday nights are. No, instead, I'm going to get to do the play-by-play of the Jefferson County Fair 4-H competition. A 3-hour live broadcast. Now, some of you here may not be familiar with this event. Kind of the World Series of livestock competition for youngsters involved in farming and raising their cattle. They're all trying to win the blue ribbon. That's right, 3 hours, wall-to-wall coverage, steers, pigs, sheep, poultry, all being paraded in front of the judges trying to get that ribbon. Now, you soon learn creativity, or maybe a more honest appraisal, you learn how little creativity you actually possess when you're describing farm animals for that long. Okay, folks, here's another steer. Very big. Black and white. Yes, this one too has 4 legs. And by golly, it's got a tail that's working, and oh no, we're about to have a deposit. You know, they pretty much all look alike, but by golly, every one of them is going for the ribbon. But of course, what the winning animal does not realize is that next week, that winner is the special of the day at the local diner. That drive back from the fairgrounds certainly had me questioning my career choice, and in no way was Major League Baseball, and certainly not Cooperstown, even entering my mind. You know, I've always said I've had the best job in the world. For 36 years, I have had the privilege of narrating the Cleveland Indians and now the Cleveland Guardians. For over 3.5 decades, Cleveland and Northeast Ohio has made us feel like family. You great fans have welcomed us into your homes, your cars, and yes, your back porches. It's a passionate fan base, and it has been everything that we could have ever wanted in raising our family. Thank you, Cleveland, for being our Camelot. We also want to thank the Jacobs family and now the Dolan family and everyone that I have worked with and become friends with down through the years in this great organization. You will never work for or with better people, and at the risk of forgetting someone, I'm not going to start mentioning names, but Wendy and I thank you again and again and again. And to the Dolan family, getting a major league job is like winning the lottery, but being a part of your organization has been the gift of a lifetime. This world needs so many more people like the Dolan family. Think what the Cleveland Indians and now the Guardians have accomplished. In the last 30 years, we've gone to the playoffs 14 times, the World Series 3 times. That only happens in a market like Cleveland with tremendous ownership, plus some of the finest front offices that have ever been assembled. Incredible managers and coaches. Outstanding people on the business side, scouts, and of course, the gifted players. We have watched a steady flow of phenomenal talent play at the corner of Carnegie in Ontario. And one of our very own, C.C. Sabathia, takes his rightful place in the Hall of Fame tomorrow. To the late Herb Score, who welcomed me with open arms when I arrived in 1990, thank you. I learned not just how to call a game, but outside of my dad, no one ever gave me better advice. The greatest lesson from Herb came in 1990, my first year in the major leagues. Now, back then, we were the only team in Tucson, so every road trip was 2+ hours going to Phoenix. So what that meant was we were now listening for 2+ hours to one of Herb's 15 Frank Sinatra cassettes. Finally, the first cassette ends. I think, okay, here's my opening. And I'm quickly telling Herb, man, Herb, this is really a really good team. This is our year. My first year, of course. We're going to be in the playoffs, like I know. Herb gave me that look. We are a blankety blank team. We are not going to the playoffs. But, he said, that will not impact us or affect us in how we call the game. Once that game begins, it's all about that game. And you may see something that night that you've never seen before in a major league game, and you may never see it again. And Herb also made sure to point out that that night's broadcast might be the one thing that one person had to look forward to the entire day. And we owe that one person the very best that we can do. Folks, that was the best advice ever. And I thank Herb for that. Then Herb said, would you please stop talking and put in another Frank tape? Another partner was the late Mike Keegan. Now, if you're from Cleveland, Mike is still probably, in any argument, the greatest athlete to ever come out of St. Ignatius High School. He played college football at Holy Cross back when Holy Cross was a national power. He spent 12 years in the big leagues, won a World Series with the Oakland A's, and he carried himself with the same grace off the field as he did on it. And even when Mike was in his 60s, he still had that incredible athletic ability. Mike and I are in the Metrodome, we're filling out our scorecards, and I noticed something move, I thought, on Mike's leg. And I said, Mike, you got a little buddy there on your thigh. Well, for those of you that have never been to a Metrodome, Joe knows that little buddy meant he had a mouse on his thigh. Mike launched out of his chair like he's returning a kickoff. He still had the amazing first step quickness, the athleticism that made him one of the greatest defensive first basemen in the history of the game. And without question, Mike was one of the finest broadcasters to ever work in Major League Baseball. And to all of my broadcasters over the years, Davey Nelson, Matt Underwood, Jim Rosenhaus, thank you for sharing the booth and the journey. We spend more time together for 7 months than we do with our families, and I've been so blessed to work with such great guys. And now Rosie and I have had our longest tenureship of 14 years. And Jim, I am so grateful for your friendship. Thank you, pal. And to Terry Smith, the voice of the Los Angeles Angels, who gave me an opportunity to work with him in Columbus doing AAA games. Without that, none of this happens. And of course, none of this happens without the love and support of my family. Going back to Waterloo with my parents, brothers, and sister, no one's ever had three better brothers than Dennis, Jim, and Robert, and our sister Mary. Dennis is here with his wife Colleen, their sons Spencer and Casey, Jim and his wife Cindy, two of their sons, Grant and Angie, and Reed and his wife Julia, Robert, his wife Ann, their son Drew, and his wife Stephanie, along with son Ty, daughter Leah, and son Davis. You know, we had such great parents who taught us it's okay to chase your dreams, but whatever it is you do, you better work hard, you better not cut corners, and you better treat people right. And for those of you here that didn't know our parents, Frank and Teresa, they were very much extroverts. And no matter who we saw on the street, whether we knew them or not, whatever city we were in, we were constantly told, it does not cost you a nickel to say hello. What great advice that was then and still is today. And of course, Mom and Dad, like all growing up in Wisconsin, were huge Brewer fans, which meant they adored Bob Uecker. Now, Ueck would always give them a shout out on the radio when we played the Brewers. Back in the 90s, we were in the same division as Milwaukee, so there were a lot of times they got to hear their name on the radio thanks to Bob Uecker. Once I asked Bob, is it okay, can I bring Mom and Dad up here? They would just love to meet you. Well, Bob being Bob said, oh my gosh, by all means, bring them on up. Now, I get Mom and Dad up there. I introduce them, Dad first to Bob. Dad, for the first and only time in his life, cannot speak. He cannot utter a word. Not Mom. Bob's saying some nice things about me, and then he tells my mom, I am so sorry that you can't listen to Tom do the Brewer games and you're stuck listening to me. Mom doesn't hesitate. Bob, you know what? You take what you can get. Mom, you take what you can get. I am suddenly trying to usher them out of Bob's booth. I am horrified. Bob is doubled over laughing. Dad still hasn't said a word. And I go, Mom, why would you say that? And she goes, you know what? That's what I believe. It was another example of our mother believing in one of her children. And we all miss Bob, but I am so grateful for his friendship, as well as all of the other Major League broadcasters I've been able to get to know down through the years. Meeting and getting to know these broadcasters has been such a gift. And to my friends, thank you for your friendship, your loyalty, your sarcasm, your reminders. Never take yourself too seriously, because you know what? Those are the best friends you can have. And we are so honored to have so many of our tremendous friends here with us this weekend, and we thank them. As well as our extended family, our cousins, the Bradys, they're from all over the country that they were able to get here, and we so appreciate that. To my wife, Wendy, thank you doesn't cover it. This great life that we have lived is because of you, your belief in me, and your belief in our family. You made the real sacrifices, the late nights, the solo parenting, the chaos. You did it with love, with strength, with grace. No husband has ever been luckier than me, and I love you so much, dear. Also, a quick lesson I learned the hard way, of course. When you're on a 10-day road trip, you're staying in 5-star hotels. Your wife calls after spending most of the day in the ER, because that, of course, is when one of the 4 children decides to fall out of a tree, break an arm, because none of that ever happens if Dad's home, only on a road trip. When your wife calls and simply has to unload about the craziness of the day and just needs an adult to listen, that is not the time to say, you know what, honey, I've had a tough day too. And of course, Wendy being Wendy, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm going on and on about me. What happened? I'm sorry. Well, dear, room service didn't toast the bun on my cheeseburger. You will soon learn that will be the most expensive cheeseburger of your life. And finally, to our children, Nick and his wife, Marissa, Kelsey and her husband, Ryan, their daughter, Lexi, Bradley and his wife, Brittany, and their sons, Liam and John Patrick, and our daughter, Katie, thank you. Thank you for being our greatest pride, our greatest joy, our true legacy. This weekend has been incredible, but you're the real miracle. You and our grandchildren are everything to us, and you have given us so many great memories, and we're so lucky to be your parents. And now you've become these incredible young adults. And boy, in these times of cynicism and negativity in our world, we look to you and a number of other young people here today, and you go, you know what? Things aren't so bad. We're going to be okay. And we're going to be okay because of people like you. And always know the 2 greatest words ever are Daddy and Grandpa. Every opening day, we always remind the fans, it's not about the destination. It's about the journey, the roller coaster ride that is a baseball season every day for 6 months. For 36 years, we have been so blessed and fortunate to be a very small part of that journey in this great game of baseball. We remain so grateful for every inning, every mile, every friend, every laugh, every game. And now this truly is the final destination. I certainly do not feel deserving or worthy of this incredible honor, but wow, Mom was right. We'll take what we can get. Thank all of you. Thank you so much, Cooperstown, and thank you, baseball.
We will now turn to the Baseball Writers Association of America's Career Excellence Award, which has been voted upon annually by the BBWAA since 1962. The award honors a baseball writer for meritorious contributions to baseball writing and is presented each Hall of Fame weekend by the president of the Baseball Writers Association of America. Again, I would like to call your attention to our video monitor for a presentation about the 2025 BBWAA Career Excellence Award winner, Thomas Boswell.
In his 52 seasons covering baseball, all for his hometown newspaper, the Washington Post, Thomas Boswell has seen it all. An icon in the industry, he is known by his readers and colleagues simply as Boz. The Post served as Boswell's professional home throughout his half-century in the field, starting as a general assignment sports reporter and moving to the Orioles beat in the early 80s before settling into a columnist role in 1984. He held that role until his formal retirement in 2021, and still writes the occasional column to this day. And then there's his Ironman streak as the Mr. October of baseball writers. Boswell first covered the World Series in 1975 as the Post's national baseball writer, a role he helped pioneer at the newspaper. That began a remarkable stretch where he covered 252 consecutive World Series games, a streak that ended poetically with the Nationals claiming the 2019 Fall Classic in his 50th year at the Washington Post.
Here it is! The Washington Nationals are world champions for the first time in franchise history.
Through it all, the pages of the Post became Boz's medium for sharing his love of the game to fans nationwide through his insightful analysis and sharp wit. Always a keen observer, Boswell also penned several books that provide an introspective look at the game. He even made one of the early attempts at quantifying a player's value in the late 1970s with his total average metric. Boswell's distinguished career and dedication to his craft has earned him the 76th BBWAA Career Excellence Award.
Thomas, if you would join me by your award. And I'd like to ask Bob Nightingale, the national writer for USA Today and the president of the Baseball Writers Association of America, to talk to us a little bit about Tom and his illustrious career.
Weaving word tapestries from seemingly endless supply of intellectual fabric, Thomas Boswell used all of sport as a cultural metaphor during more than 50 years as a writer for the Washington Post. The game that exhibited his legendary eloquence, however, was always baseball. Joining the staff of the Post in 1969, after graduating with a degree in English literature from Amherst College, Boswell, known as the Boz to all of us, spent 12 years as a general assignment reporter. By 1975, he was covering the World Series continuously through 2019 when the Nationals won the World Series. He spent several years in the Orioles beat for the Post in the 1980s before becoming a columnist, lending his language to the biggest events in the world and often earning a place on newspaper's front page, A1. In a city dominated by political news, Boswell became the author of choice by moving beyond the basic results to find the human power and the frailties of his subjects. When Major League Baseball returned to Washington, D.C. with the birth of the Washington Nationals, it was Thomas Boswell was reunited with his favorite pastime. The editors at the Washington Post encouraged him to write as much baseball as he desired. Tom obliged him a lot. Boz quickly connected with a team that became one of MLB's best, and then in 2019, it finally brought Washington, D.C. the first World Series championship to the nation's capital in 95 years. The author of several books, including Why Time Begins on Opening Day and How Life Imitates the World Series, Boswell demonstrated the unique ability to enthrall fans who range from baseball diehards to story seekers. Tom was also one of the first writers to employ modern analytics to evaluate the game, creating a statistic called total average that went far beyond to just traditional metrics of batting average and RBIs. A master of his craft, Boz built word pictures like an artist creates a painting, adding texture and background to the primary image that many had already seen, but never in quite the same way. With his love of the never-ending story of baseball, Boz created verse that honored and celebrated the game he loved. The 2025 Baseball Writers Association of America Career Excellence Award winner, Thomas Boswell.
First, I want to thank Bob Nightingale for that wonderful introduction. That required almost as much work as this speech, maybe more. But I not only want to thank Bob, the president, I want to thank all of the baseball writers of America for this precious honor. I've been enthralled by baseball all my life, so this is the one award that I've always fantasized about. To be honored here, included in Cooperstown, a very small part, but a very permanent part of the game I love, deserves something that I don't usually do. I'm going to give myself a high five. I want to give special thanks to the writers who lobbied for me. You know, lobbied, that Washington term. Several of them are here today: Chelsea Janes, Dave Sheinin, Adam Kilgore, Barry Sverluga from my own Washington Post, as well as old friends Dan Shaughnessy, Tim Kirkjian, Jason Stark, and classy Bruce Jenkins, who was a finalist for this honor this year, yet in print and on the radio came out and said, "Vote for Boz." I've got a lot more thanks to give, so let's go. Everybody needs a leg up, a break, scouts who find them if you're a ball player, or in my case, editors who believed in you. Hard work is great, luck is essential. After college, I got the lowest job at the entire Washington Post. I was a part-time copy boy on the 5:30 to 2 a.m. lobster shift. Being a lobster is not a compliment. I covered the same high school football game 6 years in a row. I covered boomerang contests. I was the duckpin bowling editor. It was, oh, there are 15 more. I just never judged hogs, but I'm pretty clever. It wasn't a meteoric rise. But two sports editors changed my career. They're here today. Don Graham imagined what I might become. And in the parlance of the newspaper business, he broke me out to bigger stories. He broke me out. Then George Solomon, my editor for 28 years, invented a beat for me that had never existed. He made me the national Major League Baseball writer for a paper in a town that did not even have a Major League team. No one had ever imagined that. On the other hand, that meant that he had to send me all sorts of places, so I ended up going to the Chattanooga Lookouts, the Spokane Brewers, rookie ball in Appalachia, winter ball in Puerto Rico, baseball in Cuba, and in 1975, to the first of 44 straight World Series. I got off to a good start. Carlton Fisk hit that home run, and baseball just took off. I also want to thank my most recent editor, the last dozen years of my career at the Post, Matt Vita, who made that period of time both creative and just a pleasure. Can we have a nice hand for all those wonderful friends? For me, after all these years, baseball is about generations. We don't play the game. We replay the memories. And we replay them together. We are bound by affection to the family and the friends with whom we share the game. That's why tens of thousands of fans are flocking here right now. In that vein, I want to start by thanking Don Larson for his perfect game in 1956. Don Larson? What? Yes, because that's where my generational baseball story begins. I walked home from school at 8 years old one day. I walked in the front door of our house on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and I heard yelling and cheering coming from inside. My mother and my godfather were going crazy. They were jumping up and down, applauding and clapping. My godfather had been a minor league baseball player. I couldn't believe what was happening. They were watching our little black and white TV. Larson had just thrown the last pitch of the perfect game. Yogi Berra jumped into his arms, and I learned something big. A baseball game could make adults act like crazy children. Since then, I have been certain that there is more to sports, more power to move us, more links to bond us, more ways to console us, and more ways to show us our similarities, not our differences, than we know, and a lot more to write about, too. Next, I want to thank Roy Sievers, the American League home run champion in 1957. He was the perfect hometown hero for me. At age 9, my family took me to a department store where Sievers was giving autographs. It was night. I thought I knew where my hero would be. I mean, I thought I had telepathy. How could Roy Sievers not be where I thought he was? So, of course, I got lost. The department store started to close at 9 o'clock. The security guards found me in tears. They brought me to my family at 20 minutes past 9. Roy Sievers was gone, except Roy Sievers was not gone. He had stayed to sign 2 pictures for the little lost boy. Thanks to all the people of the game who understood what I wanted most from them, an education. Earl Weaver was my grad school professor. My friends knew that Earl was going to play a role here. It was hard to get Earl's attention, much less his respect. He even scared some of his ball players. Reggie Jackson would make a mistake in the field or on the bases and be afraid to come back into the dugout. He said, the little Weaver would have his foot on the top step, and as soon as you got there, he'd point that little finger at you and say, why? And you better have a good explanation. But this day, after 3 years on the beat, Earl and I were the last people in the dugout alone together. And he was chain smoking his unfiltered cigarettes. And he said, I smoke these damn Raleighs because with 50,000 coupons, they give you a brass coffin. There are probably a couple extra words in there since it was Earl. Then he looked up at me. It had been 3 years. And he looked at me seriously and he said, you're still here. And I took that as one of the best compliments I ever got. And I still choose to believe that he saw that he had identified a fellow baseball lifer. I have very few rules to live by, but Weaver gave me 2 of them. We reporters would ask Earl why what he said in March and spring training didn't match necessarily with what he was doing in May. He would look at us like bugs, and he would say, everything changes everything. Every rookie who gets hot, every veteran who collapses, every radical change, every injury changes the whole team and sends ripples through the whole team. You have to accept what has just happened, you have to analyze it, and you have to adapt to it. Earl also, when his strategies failed, often insisted he was correct anyway. He'd say, lose the right way, and he'd give us the bug look. And we'd, what? Lose the right way? In baseball, as one example, when the game's on the line, not every pitch of the game, but crisis moments, don't get beat with your 3rd best pitch. If you throw your 1st best pitch and it gets hit, or your 2nd best and it gets hit, that's life, that's baseball. But don't get beat with your 3rd best pitch. I can't tell you the times I've applied that to everyday life, and it came from Earl. I just hope my son Russell, who's in the audience today, doesn't say, I think I'll make everything changes everything Dad's epitaph. When Russ was 8 years old, I took him and his friend Drew to an Orioles game. As we were getting out of the car, I slammed the door and I slammed it right on Drew's finger. He bawled, Drew, what can I do for you? I'll do anything. The tears stopped and he said, can you get me Cal Ripken's autograph? He had good timing. This was 1995, the year he broke the record. Now, we're not supposed to do that, not supposed to ask for autographs. But a few days later, I asked Cal, can you sign a ball for Drew? And Cal said, I'll leave it in my locker between games of the doubleheader. I was shocked. I'd known Cal since he was in the minor leagues. I said, he's blowing me off. He signs for everybody. There's a ball right here. He's not signing it. But so what? I came back between games of the doubleheader. There was a ball in Cal's locker. It wasn't just autographed. It was covered in writing, including a joke that his dad used when you were trying to get over injuries. Ripken had made it personal, and in a way that Drew would read it again and again and enjoy it more as he got older. Now, Drew is married, he has kids, he's an Orioles fan, and the ball is on the mantelpiece of his living room. Like Larson making grown-ups leap, or Seavers showing how a modest man becomes a hero by waiting for a lost child, the baseball generations, the legacy, turned again with that Cal ball. Now I want to thank my wonderful wife, Wendy. For 40 years of incredible patience. No one here has been able to get over the irony that both award winners are Tom and they're both married to Wendy. Red Smith was once asked how long it took to write a column. And Red said, how long do I have? That's me too. Like Red, I believe that good writing is rewriting and then rethinking and then rewriting again until they tear the copy out of your hands. Wendy endured that process and understood it. And she endured it graciously, though it left 1,000 dinners cold. Wendy's a voracious reader. We went to lunch with Roger Angell, who was the fiction editor of The New Yorker for decades, and as you know, undoubtedly a winner of this award. I thought we'd talk baseball since Roger's perhaps the greatest baseball writer who ever lived. But Roger found out that Wendy had read many of the modern fiction writers that he'd edited for years. For the next 2 hours, Roger never spoke to me again. Now we come to the 2019 Nationals. Their title, the first for Washington in 95 years, gave generations of fans a chance to revel in what I'd watched so often in other cities. They got to feel the 7 months of the season, longer counting spring training, when you follow every twist and turn of the year and you come to the 7th game of the World Series and you have taken the whole amusement park ride. Regardless of who wins, you now know what the grip of the game is and how powerful it is on you. And after you've had that experience, you can't wait for the next season so you can buy another ticket to ride. In that title run, the Nats were trailing by 2 runs in the bottom of the 8th inning in the wild card game. In other words, they were on the brink of elimination in their season. Then Juan Soto smashed a line drive to right field off Josh Hader, who was the best relief pitcher in the game back then. But there was a bad hop in right field. So it turned that single, which might have scored 1 or 2 runs maybe to tie the game, into a 3-run go-ahead hit for the Nationals. All night, more than 42,000 people had been drinking their beer, their Pepsi, or their water, and not one fan all night had thought to throw anything in the air on his neighbor. But as the ball rolled far and free, every fan knew the Nats would take the lead and that they would be 3 outs from advancing for the first time in a postseason in almost a century. Every human with a cup of anything threw it straight up as hard as they could. The national telecast, which you can still see on YouTube, looks like Nationals Park, the entire left field bleachers, center field bleachers, all around. All of Nationals Park looks like it is in a rainstorm. No cue, just pure joy. That's how yet another generation of fans is born. Thanks also to the teams that lost games for those huge stakes. And I've covered so many of them. Then took a grim, proud ownership of their finest effort, even when it's in defeat. The poet Emily Dickinson said, "I like a look of agony because I know it's true. I've been in those losing locker rooms. I know the pride and dignity of proper defeat when you have given everything, and so often the margin is that one hop like Soto's hit. Now, many people I've mentioned today are now in the Hall of Fame. Whether I believe it or not, I'm in a room nearby. Thanks, baseball, my subject for study and inspiration, my companion, always available, both young and now kind of old, my bond with a huge community of others, generations of them who are gathering here right now. We share our affection for all that baseball has given us in our lives. We will anticipate the fun and the surprises to come, and we'll amble through the Hall of Fame here and feel, oh, as I do, grateful. And now, I think I'll just walk it off.
I would now like to ask Commissioner Manfred to please open our discussion about the 30th anniversary of Cleveland's American League Championship in 1995. Commissioner.
Good afternoon, everyone. With so many Cleveland fans here in Cooperstown this weekend, we're going to take a look back on the 30th anniversary of that franchise's league championship in 1995. I would like to call your attention to the video monitor for a reminder of that great team and all they accomplished.
To say the 95 Indians had a swagger doesn't do swagger justice.
A swing and a long drive, deep left, way back, go! Manny Ramirez has won it!
27 of the 100 wins came in the last at bat. 27.
A swing and a drive to deep left center, way back, it is gone! Albert Bell has done it again!
Finally, Cleveland was the big bad bully kicking sand in somebody else's face.
Right into right field, a base hit. Eddie Murray has done it. The 20th player in baseball history to reach 3,000. Eddie Murray has assured himself a spot at Cooperstown. A swing and a drive, deep left, way back, gone. Albert Bell, the first man in baseball history with 50 home runs, 50 doubles, and what a joyous jogger on the bases for Albert Bell. In the air, Tommy at third, and this season of dreams has become a reality. Cleveland, you will have an October to remember.
Would they have liked to have won? Yeah. But this wasn't going to be one of those Cleveland sports tragedies. This was a Cleveland celebration. Getting to the World Series, having a baseball team to be proud of for that year, that was enough.
First, I hope you will welcome once again the 2025 Ford C. Frick Award winner, Tom Hamilton. Next, we have the manager of the 1995 team who led Cleveland to 5 straight division titles, Mike Hargrove. In 1995, Mark Shapiro was a rising star in the baseball operations department of the Cleveland Indians. He went on to become the general manager and club president. He now serves as the president of the Toronto Blue Jays. Please welcome Mark Shapiro. Next, we have a member of the Hall of Fame class of 2018 and a key member of the 1995 team, Jim Thome. I'm now going to turn it over to Tom Hamilton to do the honors.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Make sure I do know how to use these yet. Sorry about that. First off, thanks again for everybody being here. This is such a fun part for us to look back. Incredible that it's been 30 years, and I'll start with Grover because Mike guided this club through the renaissance that began really in '94 before things ended abruptly. But Mike, you took this organization to 2 World Series. You played for the ball club when they weren't a very good ball club. Did it mean even more for you?
Well, yeah. Is this on? You didn't know you were going to have to work today, did you? Yeah, it did. I mean, when I played, you know, our goal, honest to goodness, when you looked at it realistically, we played to hopefully finish 500 for the year, and to be able to come back and as a coach and then manager, and get players like Jimmy and Manny Ramirez and Albert and Eddie Murray and Kenny Lofton. You can go on and on and on. To come in and realize when you left spring training that you had a legitimate chance to win the division and the league and maybe even a World Series, and it wasn't a pipe dream. And to be around those guys, they said the '95 Indians had a swagger. I can remember when we met. We had those winter meetings in Cleveland. Had the ball club came in and players would get up in this little meeting and they'd talk about. Let's play with swagger. Let's work on our body language so people don't take, we get the advantage. And in the big leagues, talent is so even that, that one little edge will make all the difference in the world. And these guys, took it to the extreme.
Mark, you were early in your career, as Commissioner Rob Manfred stated, you were the farm director, and it was a farm system that really ignited all of this because most of these guys were homegrown.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously a weak stand-in here for John Hart and Dan O'Dowd and their vision, but I can remember interviewing in the '91-92 offseason in Municipal Stadium, which they showed, during your introduction, and their vision was great young players like Jim Thome, Kenny Lofton, Sandy Alomar, Carlos Baerga. As we move to the new stadium, we're going to have this crop of incredibly talented core young players, and we're going to supplement with Dennis Martinez and Oral Hershiser and Eddie Murray and veterans. And so that year was all those things coming together. '94 really was, but that was obviously a shortened year. And then, to hear the car horns were really the music, throughout the city that year. You could after every single one of those sellouts, which they were all sellouts, you'd walk out after every one of those wins and you'd hear a symphony of car horns and people screaming, let's go Tribe. So incredible, memories, incredible, obviously these two guys and what they meant to it. And then, to be able to be here and represent John and Dan's vision and their hard work is pretty cool.
Well, one of those guys, Jimmy, had almost 1,700 career RBIs, 612 home runs, a member of baseball's Hall of Fame. All of the things you accomplished of all of the seasons, is '95 still one of the most special, and if so, why?
For me, no doubt. I think growing up in the organization, being drafted, and the expectations for us were very high. We had great farm development. We had great coaches that guided us, helped us along the way. And then when we got to the big leagues, we had our great coaches there that also took over, which helped us progress and be the players that we ultimately wanted to be.
You, though, were the most businesslike, but even you had a bat flip in the World Series, and the Braves let you hear about it, didn't they?
Yeah, my son still tells me about it today. But anyway, that was you're in a moment that in a World Series that you don't really imagine. and hitting a ball like that was pretty special.
Yeah, I got goosebumps watching it, so I don't.
Grover, 27 last at-bat victories out of 100 wins in one season. That's not supposed to happen.
Well, it's really not. I mean, it was a special group. You know, in spring training, we talked about all the time that we had to be mentally tougher than the other team. You know, our physical talent was there, but if we could stay in the moment, in the game, and be mentally tougher than what was going on, then it gave us another, like I said, an edge. And these guys, it was amazing. You'd sit there, and there were times when we would be 2-3 runs down, going into the 8th inning, and I'd get Jose Mesa, our closer, up, and somebody say, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "You watch." And sure enough, it happened. But we had guys throughout our lineup. You know, our number 9 hitter, Paul Sereno, had 25 home runs that year. I mean, it was a tremendous offensive ball club, and they were a fun bunch to watch, fun bunch to be around too.
And I think it galvanized a city and a region, Mark, and kind of stopped a lot of the last night or the late night talk show jokes. Cleveland was no longer a joke.
Yeah, it was the realization, 40 years of frustration on the baseball front, the Browns having left, the Cavs had not yet gotten the ping pong ball that landed LeBron James. And so, John Hart used to call it Camelot. That kind of led the start of that mid-90s run that was so special and featured so many of the greatest players in the game, players that are here, and that it's been an honor just to be around, set the bar for, and obviously people talk about the offense, but the pitching too was dominant, really some of the best starting pitching. But that offense was hardest to strike out, high, most home runs. I think we won our division by 30 games, and I remember being at a AAA game with John Hart, watching his little clicker, watching the second place team behind him that was 28 games behind us, and I was like, I guess that's a good lesson of what being a GM is going to be like.
Jimmy, why that club has so many personalities?
Yeah.
And yet it all worked, because I think if somebody would have gone into a clubhouse at certain times of the day, they would have gone, what in the world? It sounded like a dance party.
We had a lot of fun. When you have Baerga and you have Vizquel, and then our bench guys, the guys on our bench, they were Espy, Kirby, they were always well prepared, but we had a good time. But when it was time to get serious, it was time to get serious, and we put the work in to do it. But I think that little bit of camaraderie, brotherhood in the clubhouse really, really helped us relax game time, and we were fortunate to carry it on.
Grover, I think we also saw, and again, you played there when they weren't good, but we saw how much it meant to the city. I mean, we did not win the World Series, and yet when this ball club returned home at 5 in the morning, I don't know how many thousands of people were at the airport. There was a parade. That just doesn't happen anymore.
Well, no, but you think back, when we did what we did in '95, that was 40 years of frustration being released, and the fans had a lot to do with it. I'll never forget. You walk out of the field, and it's a packed house. The fans, it wasn't a loud, cheer. It was like a low, steady rumble starting with the first pitch on, and our players, it really energized you and gave you a little bit of a half a step ahead, but. Our fans in '95 were such an important part of maintaining and continuing what we were doing, on the field, that it was fun to show up at the ballpark every day and go to work. And these guys knew when it was time to work, and we did have fun. They did have fun in the clubhouse. My office was down the hall, and they'd have the music up so loud I'd have to shut my door. But come 6:15, 6:30. The music was off and guys were ready to play, and it was an amazing sight and fun to be a part of.
You know how hard it is to put together a winner, and Mark, you've got now the team with the best record in the American League. Will we ever see a lineup quite like that one again in '95?
I don't know. It's hard to imagine. You think about, even guys that should be in the conversation for being here, like Kenny Lofton, and the dominance he had just how good we were up the middle. Albert Bell with one of the greatest seasons in offensive seasons you could ever imagine, 50 homers and 50 doubles. And I think that's just beyond belief. It was like Grover said, it was 1 through 9. It was scary. We could beat you, with multiple hits. We could beat you with homers, multiple ways to win. And we had, lockdown closer and Jose Mesa and really good starting pitching. So that team, was as good as it gets. Again, there's a randomness to postseason, unfortunately. I'll never forget knocking the Mariners out and that feeling in Seattle. That was like, that was something to witness and see. But I mean, it's hard to imagine a better team than that decade for sure.
We'll finish it with Jimmy. Jimmy, any final thoughts, any final memories? Because obviously you're going to go down in franchise history, not only one of the all-time greatest players ever for Cleveland, but probably as popular players ever wore the uniform.
Well, thank you, and congrats to you, Tommy, on this great day. So blessed and forward to have been drafted by Cleveland, but also to be able to grow up with so many fine people in the front office, in the organization. You look at the people that are still there, and I think the success, we talk about the Dolans, we talk about Mr. Jacobs, that tradition is very, very deep and rich in Cleveland. And I think, as a player, you appreciate, and you're very honored and proud to say, man, I was a Cleveland Indian at a young age.
And there's a senior to be named Landon Tomey, who's supposed to go to the University of Tennessee, but maybe we can beat Tennessee to that with a pick in the draft.
We'll see.
Jim Tomey, Mark Shapiro, Mike Hargrove. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you, folks.
No, thank you. And Tom, come join us up here with the commissioner, Josh, myself, Thomas. Ladies and gentlemen, let's congratulate our 2025 Ford C. Frick Award winner and BBWAA Career Excellent Award winners. Here they are. Thank you all so much for coming to this wonderful afternoon at the home of the Glimmerglass Opera Festival. And we hope you're planning to join us tomorrow for our 2025 induction ceremony at 1:30 on the grounds of the Clark Sports Center. If you're not with us there, tune in to MLB for their live, full coverage and commentary of the afternoon. Again, thank you for coming. Safe travels.